Hey, what's up everyone? It's Justin here and welcome to the review of the Nexus 6P, possibly the most complete Android experience I've had to date. So it's that time of year again. After a busy 2015 year of smartphone releases from all major manufacturers, Google likes to cap things off with their official Android smartphones this year with the Nexus 6P and 5X. And after last year's initial release of the Nexus 6 made by Motorola, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, it made me very excited for what I should expect to see this year. And I've got to say, I am very impressed inside out. And if you're someone who has held off on all of the flagship releases up to now, it was definitely worth the wait. Google surprised a lot of people when they announced that they've been teaming up with Huawei to bring the next flagship Nexus device. A company that has a huge presence overseas, but not so much in North America, but I think that this will definitely spark its presence in the North American market as a great hardware maker. It features the latest modern day technologies that we saw a lot of this year, including a fingerprint sensor that is located on the back in a small little indentation, and it is very easy to access and extremely fast. You've also got a USB-C port on the bottom that we started to see late in this year, but expect to see much more of in 2016, and it also features quick charge technology. And of course, the Nexus 6P being a flagship smartphone has flagship specs, including a Snapdragon 810 processor with 3GB of RAM, a 12-megapixel rear-facing camera with 4K video recording capability, as well as a 3450 mAh battery. The device is by no means small, however, coming in at almost 6.3 inches tall, 3 inches wide, and 7.3 millimeters thick, with the total package weighing in at 178 grams. It is also beautifully constructed out of aluminum and available in color variants including frost white, silver aluminum, which I'm featuring in this video, and also black. The device itself just feels so seamless in the hand, and I really like the way that they have sculpted the body out of the metal. Last year's Nexus 6 just felt way too big, and this year's definitely feels more comfortable in the hand, despite still being very large. When it comes to the display, the Nexus 6 features a 5.7-inch 2560 by 1440 resolution display. Though last year's Nexus featured the same display, there were some issues with it, whether it was the viewing angle and a weird rainbow effect that I experienced, or the fact that the colors were just way oversaturated. The second I booted up the Nexus 6P though, I was impressed with this display, and that was after I've tested out devices such as the Samsung Galaxy Note 5 and the S6 this year, and the colors literally just popped out of the screen but weren't as saturated as what I've seen on Samsung. That being said, it is an AMOLED display, and I noticed that this had a great balance in terms of a natural color representation, but also a little bit of a kick in the vibrance to give it a nicer viewing experience in my opinion. With this 5.7-inch display and a simple black bezel going around it, it makes for a very immersive video experience, and I'm going to talk more about the speakers later in this video. So now that I've talked a lot about the hardware of the Nexus 6P, you can tell that I really like it. So I think now it's time to show the software some love as well, and this features the latest Android 6.0 Marshmallow, of course, being a Nexus device. After reviewing many Android devices this year, it is great to be back on stock Android. It literally feels like home to me. I'm always all in for that buttery smooth Android experience, and I actually enjoy the simplicity and material design of Android 6.0 Marshmallow. That being said, the upgrade from Android Lollipop to Marshmallow, in my opinion, is sort of like iOS 8 to iOS 9. On paper, it seems like there's a lot of changes, but many of which you don't really notice when you're using the device. Most of them are under the hood. Everything from normal use seems very familiar, whether it is the drop-down menu for notifications, the settings which stay very flat, bright, and easy to access. But of course, Google does also boast some battery improvements and some optimizations that make the Android experience better. Honestly, the only major feature that I actually used was Google Now on tap, which is pretty big. For example, if you're on a web page browsing and would like some more information that is customized to you, just hold on the home button that would usually take you to Google Now, and that will scan the page and bring the information that it thinks you will need. It was often hit or miss, but the way that Google Now has progressed over the years, I'm really optimistic for Now on tap. Now onto the gaming experience. As you can tell, I finally switched up the app that I use to test the games on smartphones. Previously I had used Real Racing 3, but I think Modern Combat 5 is a great game to test the capabilities in terms of the GPU performance on a smartphone. Almost every Android smartphone I used this year did have the flagship Snapdragon 800 series processor, so none of them experienced any lag at all handling these graphic intensive games, and obviously the Nexus 6P isn't going to either. We all know that these Android smartphones can handle these games, so we often look beyond that, whether it is the way the display looks, the speakers on the smartphone, the way the device feels in the hand, and whether or not it heats up over long periods of time. I think that the Nexus 6P nails it in every category, and I will note that the device did get a little bit warm after about 10 minutes straight of playing this game, but other than that it had no issues whatsoever, and the heat wasn't anything to be really worried about. So now on to the camera, what used to be the Nexus's most hated category. In the previous years, the Nexus smartphones were highly praised until it came to the camera, which is where the review pretty much fell apart. They weren't awful, but they just weren't good enough when compared to many flagship smartphones out in the market. This year you've got a 12 megapixel rear-facing camera with the ability to record 4K video, and an 8 megapixel front-facing camera on the front that shoots 720p video. The camera in this year's Nexus 6P definitely showed some improvements from previous years. That being said, it looked really good in the perfectly lit situations, as you can tell from the indoor shots. But some of the outdoor shots were quite underexposed, and I think a lot of the issues I found with the camera had to do with the way it was processed and can definitely be fixed with software updates. The camera was pretty fast to focus and take the pictures though, and the sharpness and clarity seen in the images is definitely present. The photos taken in low light were pretty acceptable as well. As for the front-facing camera, I found it to be pretty standard, nothing really impressive here, but it would have been nice for a wider angle lens. Moving on to the video recording, I found it to be quite underexposed, and when trying to select a different area to focus, it actually made it far overexposed. It wasn't bad by any means, but the video stabilization could definitely use some work, and hopefully a software update soon will make the camera even better. The battery life on the Nexus 6P was pretty good. It features a 3450 mAh battery, and I was easily able to make it through 2 days. Another great thing is also the integration of Quick Charge 2.0, and with the other USB-C device I had tested out this year, the OnePlus 2, it didn't have any optimization settings that made USB anything effective aside from the fact that the cable was reversible. The Android 6.0 Marshmallow improvements definitely helped contribute to the battery optimization, and of course you also have the option to use a battery saver mode. By doing so, it kind of throttles the processor as a whole and turns off the animations, but it still allows you to have the full capability of your smartphone as opposed to the ultra power saving modes we have seen on Samsung's, for example, where it limits you to only your most used applications. So my experience with the Nexus 6P was that the battery life was great. So the last thing I'd like to talk about is the built-in speakers, and from my experiences of reviewing most of the flagship smartphones this year, it seemed to be the part where pretty much every smartphone manufacturer sort of forgot, with exception to HTC. In fact, it was one of the best speakers I've tested out on a smartphone, and it is as close as a smartphone has gotten in terms of the speaker quality to the HTC One M9's boom sound. As a result of this, paired up with the large 5.7-inch 2560 by 1440 resolution display, this smartphone is great for any media consumption you plan to do. But this pretty much wraps it up for my review of the Nexus 6P, and as you can tell from the review, I really enjoyed the smartphone. It's definitely one of my favorites and a great way to cap off the year of Android smartphones, and I can definitely recommend it to anyone out there who has waited all this time and hasn't picked up a new smartphone this year. Whether it is a beautiful design and premium construction and feel, or a great looking AMOLED display and dual front-facing speakers, as well as a pretty good camera on the smartphone, Android 6.0 Marshmallow just kind of ties all of these great things together and makes it what I would say is almost the ultimate smartphone in my opinion. Really the only complaint I had is 5.7 inches is a little bit on the large side, at least for me, but I think Huawei was a great choice for a hardware partner in this year's flagship Nexus from Google. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to hit that like button as it helps the channel out a bunch, and the links to purchase and additional information will be in the description section below, and I'll see you all in the next video.